having the form in the thread show component might be acceptable in a small application. But if you place everything in one file, it can get messy quickly and hard to maintain as the application grows. So we'll extract the form to a component that will be responsible for creating posts. I will name it Post Editor. Another benefit in having a dedicated component is that we will be able to reuse it later when we are about to edit a post. Let's move the form to Post Editor's template. We will need to define the new post text property and the add post method. I will copy them from the thread show. Now we need to take a decision. Do we want the post editor to append the new post to source data directly, or should we let the parent component be responsible for that? Both ways are fine, but as I have mentioned in previous lessons, I like to keep the logic that alters the state in the parent component, and keep the smaller components very simple. It feels more tidy to keep the methods that interact with the store in one place. When the update logic is placed in the parent component, we need a way to inform the parent component that the new post is ready when the form is submitted. We have learned that we can pass data down to a child component using props, but when we need to communicate back to the parent, we will use Vue's custom events. Custom events work like the native browser events, similar to the ones we use to listen and take action when our form was submitted. Except that with custom events, we can define the name ourselves. The custom event broadcasts to anyone listening that something has happened. We say that we emit an event. To emit a custom event, we use this $emit. The first argument of $emit is the name of the event, and the rest of the arguments are the data or the payload you would like to send to the event listener. In our case, we can emit a save post event and pass the new post to the listener. You can also pass as many arguments as you like to the event listener. For instance, you could pass an author, a thread, a user, and so on. Another thing you can do is to wrap all these arguments in an object, which is what I prefer to do. In our case, we want to pass just the post. A benefit of passing an object is that you don't need to remember the argument order, because you will access the arguments based on the object key. For instance, event-data.post will always be the post. I will comment the code related to altering the source data object. Let's import and register the post editor component in thread show. Now I will render it where we had the form before. Let's see what happens when we create a new post now. I will first give some room to the Vue DevTools and switch to the timeline view. Here I will highlight the component events tab. And now I will create a post. Notice that we can track events for the mouse movements and for the keyboard while I type something in the input. Now, when I click Submit Post, you can see we get a new bubble in the component events. If you click this bubble, you can see that this event is the save post that is emitted by the post editor, and it carries along the new post we have prepared. We can also change to the All tab here, and now every time I click Submit Post, we can see a new event popping up here carrying the new payload. Of course, nothing happens in the view since we have not created a listener for this event. To listen to the save post event, I will use the von directive along with the event name. So here, that will be onSavePost equals the name of the method. I will use the addPost method and I will make the necessary changes. To begin with, I will just log the arguments in the console. Let's try it again. Now we get some feedback when we create a new post. What I notice here is that the thread ID is undefined. That makes sense since post editor is not aware of the thread that will inherit the post. To fix it, we can either do something like post thread ID equals this ID within page thread show, or pass the thread ID to post editor using props. Both ways are fine. I will create a new object post in page thread show that will have all the properties of the past event data post and also the thread ID. Here I also want to update this line to get the post ID from the post object. I will move the console log here and try again. Now the thread ID is right, since it is the same with the one I see in the browser URL. I want to make some changes to post editor. First of all, we should remove the thread ID line. Then I want to rename the add post method to save. Then the attribute new post text can become something shorter, since it's pretty straightforward what it represents. So it can become post text or even just text. I also prefer shorter event names, so I will change our custom event name to save. We should also update the event listener. When you rename a custom event, don't forget to update the listeners as well. Okay, I'm quite satisfied with what we have so far. Let's review our code. In post editor, when the form is submitted, we call the save method. The save method defines an ID for the post, and this is something that we have here temporarily. Then it creates a new post object, and it emits an event save with a payload object that includes a post and resets the text value to nothing. In page thread show, we listen for the save event, and when it happens, we call the add post method. Add post accepts the event data, and it creates a new object called post that takes all the properties from the post editor and breaks them down using the spread operator, and also adds a new property thread ID that is equal to the active thread. Then it accesses the post object, that it is the root store, and pushes the newly created post. After that, it goes to the thread post property and pushes the new ID of our new post. Then we have a console log, which I will remove now. And here we have this old code that resets the new post text that I will also remove. We should also remove this property from our data. Okay, that should work perfectly. Let's give it a final shot. Boom! Perfect.